Welcome aboard. Welcome to today's tour. Today we are at the Santa Monica Airport that has the airport code KSMO and is a general aviation airport here in Santa Monica, California. The airport is located about 2 miles or 3 kilometers from Santa Monica Bay. Originally, it was named Clover Field and was the home to the Douglas Aircraft Company manufacturing plant. And today we are in California, just outside Los Angeles, because today we're talking about Super Bowl I, the first big game that was held here in Los Angeles in 1967. Well, let's get the plane started. We'll set up the cockpit and we'll take a look around the airport. We will start our flight today here at the Santa Monica Airport and fly east towards downtown Los Angeles. Then make our way back west and find the LA Coliseum, the location of the big game. From there, we're going to head southwest towards Los Angeles International Airport, which is our final destination today. And when we do that, we will find Sofi Stadium, which is located just outside of LAX. A couple other notable sites we will fly over today are Crypto.com Arena, which was formerly the Staples Center, and the Inglewood Oil Field. Let's taxi out now and get this plane in the air.
Santa Monica Airport information, Sierra 1800 Zulu. Wind 258 at tree. Visibility, niner. Sky condition, clear. Temperature, 15. Dew point, 13. Altimeter 29.92. Visual runway 21 in use. Landing and departing runway 21. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have Sierra.
Today we are in the Cessna 172 Skyhawk. The 172 Skyhawk is a 4-seat, single-engine, high-wing, fixed-wing aircraft made by the Cessna Aircraft Company. The first Cessna was flown in 1955, and more 172s have been built than any other aircraft. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. What we do is we find interesting places to talk about, and then we find them here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The tours are about the events or locations and not about recreating any flights or actual aviation events. We are at the hold short line. Let's prepare for takeoff. On January 15, 1967, on a bright, clear day in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Coliseum, the big question that football fans had been asking for years was going to finally be answered. For the first time ever, the National Football League champions were going to play the American Football League champions. This game would not only decide which league was the champion between the two competing football leagues, it would also test the waters for the eventual merger of the two leagues. Retroactively known as the first Super Bowl, but that term was not the official title of the game. The first two championship games between the AFL and NFL champions were simply known as the AFL-NFL Championship Game. But the Chiefs' owner, Lamar Hunt, had begun using the term Super Bowl. The media latched onto this phrase and started using it as well. The term Super Bowl gained so much popularity that by January 1969, the NFL officially called this title game the Super Bowl. This first Super Bowl was televised to 65 million viewers on 2 networks, and the winning team would receive $15,000 per man, and tickets to this big event were $12. This event only came about because there were 2 competing football leagues at the time. The NFL was formed in 1920 as the American Professional Football Association, APFA, before renaming itself the National Football League in 1922. On August 20th, 1920, a meeting was held by representatives of the Akron Pros, the Canton Bulldogs, the Cleveland Indians, and the Dayton Triangles at an auto showroom in Canton, Ohio. This meeting resulted in the formation of the American Professional Football Conference, APFC, which intended to raise the standard of professional football. The goal was to eliminate bidding wars for players between rival clubs and to cooperate in the creation of the schedules. Another meeting was held in September of that year with representatives from 4 more teams, including the Hammond Pros and Muncie Flyers from Indiana, the Rochester Jeffersons from New York, as well as the Rock Island Independents, the Decatur Staleys, and the Racine Cardinals from Illinois. And the league was renamed at that time to the American Professional Football Association, APFA. Within the next year, the Buffalo All-Americans, the Chicago Tigers, and the Columbus Panhandles, as well as the Detroit Heralds, would also join the league. On June 24, 1922, the APFA changed its name to the National Football League, the NFL. By the 1950s, the NFL had an effective monopoly on professional football in the United States. Its only competition in North America was the Professional Canadian Football Circuit, which formally became the Canadian Football League in 1958. From 1920 to 1934, the NFL did not have a set number of games for the teams to play. Instead, they set a minimum. The league mandated a 12-game regular season for each team starting in 1935. Later, shortening that to 11 games in 1937 and 10 games in 1943. This was mainly due to World War II. After the war ended, the number of games returned to 11 games in 1946 and later back to 12 games in 1947. The NFL went to a 14-game schedule in 1961, which it remained until changing it to 16 games in 1978. In 2021, the NFL went to a 17-game schedule. During the 1950s, the National Football League had grown to rival Major League Baseball and was one of the most popular professional sports leagues in the United States. A successful businessman, Lamar Hunt, offered to buy one of the NFL teams, the Cardinals. His plan was to move them to Dallas, where he had grown up. Negotiations to buy and move the team fell through. After failing to purchase a team, he approached the NFL commissioner about an expansion team, but the commissioner at the time, Bert Bell, rejected that idea. On Lamar's return flight to Dallas, he conceived the idea of an entirely new league and decided to contact the others who had shown interest in purchasing the Cardinals. The others who had made offers to buy the Cardinals were Bud Adams, Bob Howsam, and Max Winter. In addition to Bud, Bob, and Max, Lamar reached out to Bill Boyer, Max Winter's business partner, to gauge their interest in starting a new football league. During their first meeting, Lamar felt a regional rivalry would be critical for the success of any new league. He convinced Bud Adams to join and found his team in Houston. Lamar next got an agreement from Bob Howsam to bring a team to Denver. After Max Winter and Bill Boyer agreed to start a new team in Minneapolis-St. Paul, this new football league had its first 4 teams. Hunt then approached others to bring pro football to Seattle, Los Angeles, Buffalo, and New York City. During the summer of 1959, he worked with the NFL to approve his new league to avoid any potential or costly rivalry. Within weeks of the July 1959 announcement of the league's formation, Lamar had received potential commitments to bring teams to at least Los Angeles and New York. At a meeting in Dallas on August 22nd that year, the league was officially named the American Football League. The NFL's initial reaction was not as openly hostile as it had been with earlier rivals like the All-American Football Conference, and actually the commissioner had even given his approval. But after the commissioner's sudden death in 1959, individual NFL owners began a campaign to undermine this new league. And soon enough, the NFL and the AFL found themselves in a bidding war for the top free agents and prospects coming out of college. Originally, there had been an informal agreement between the two leagues not to undermine each other by signing players who were already under contract with a team from the opposing league. This policy broke down in early 1966 when the NFL's New York Giants signed Pete Gogolak, a place kicker who was under contract with the AFL's Buffalo Bills. The AFL owners considered this an act of war and immediately struck back, signing several contracted NFL players, including 8 of their top quarterbacks. Eventually, the NFL had had enough and started negotiations with the AFL in an attempt to resolve the player issue. As a result of these negotiations, the league signed a merger agreement on June 9, 1966. In this agreement, both leagues agreed to share a common draft in order to end the bidding war, as well as merge into a single league after the 1969 season. Also, an AFL-NFL World Championship Game was established, in which the AFL and NFL champions would play against each other in a game at the end of the season to determine which league had the best team. The first AFL-NFL World Championship Game was played on January 15, 1967, at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum right here in Los Angeles, California. The National Football League's champion Green Bay Packers played the American Football League champion Kansas City Chiefs. At the time, there was a fair amount of animosity between the AFL and NFL, so the teams representing the two rival football leagues, Kansas City from the AFL and Green Bay from the NFL, felt additional pressure to win. The Chiefs had finished their season 11-2-1 during that 1966 AFL season and defeated the Buffalo Bills 31-7 in the AFL Championship Game. The Packers had finished their 1966 NFL season with a record of 12-2 and defeated the Dallas Cowboys 34-27 in the NFL Championship Game. Many sports writers and fans believed any team in the older NFL was vastly superior to any club in this upstart AFL, so it was widely expected the Green Bay Packers would easily beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Many people considered it fitting that the Chiefs and the Packers would be the teams to play in this first ever AFL-NFL World Championship Game. The Chiefs owner, Lamar Hunt, had founded the AFL, while the Green Bay Packers were widely considered one of the best teams in the NFL. The Packers had joined the NFL in 1921, only a year after the league's formation. Kansas City's high-powered offense had led the AFL in points scored, 448, and also in total rushing yards, 2,274. Their trio of running backs, Mike Garrett, Burt Cohen, and Curtis McClinton, all ranked among the top 10 rushers in the AFL. Quarterback Len Dawson was the top-rated passer in the AFL, completing 159 of 284 passes for 2,527 yards and 26 touchdowns. Wide receiver Otis Taylor provided the team with a great deep threat by recording 58 receptions for 1,297 yards and 18 touchdowns that season. Receiver Chris Burford added 58 receptions for 750 yards and 8 touchdowns. And tight end Fred Urbanus, who had 22 catches for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns, was one of the 6 Chiefs offensive players who were named to the All-AFL team. The Chiefs also had a fairly strong defense. The Green Bay Packers were an NFL dynasty, turning around what had been a losing team just 8 years earlier. The team had posted an NFL worst 1-10-1 record in 1958 before head coach Vince Lombardi was hired in January 1959. Vince was determined to build a winning team. During the preseason, he signed Fred Fuzzy Thurston, who had been cut from 3 other teams, but ended up becoming an all-pro left guard for Green Bay. Lombardi also made a big trade with the Cleveland Browns that brought 3 players to the team who would become cornerstones of the defense: linemen Henry Jordan, Willie Davis, and Bill Quinlan. Lombardi's hard work paid off, and the Packers improved to a 7-5 regular season record in 1959. They surprised the league during the following year by making it all the way to the 1960 NFL Championship Game. Green Bay went on to win NFL championships in 1961, 1962, 1963, and 1966. Packers veteran quarterback Bart Starr was the top-rated quarterback in the NFL for 1966 and won the NFL's Most Valuable Player award, completing 156 of 251 passes for 2,257 yards, 14 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. His top receiving targets were wide receivers Boyd Dowler and Carroll Dale, who combined for 63 receptions for 1,336 yards. Fullback Jim Taylor was the team's top rusher with 705 yards, adding 4 touchdowns and caught 41 passes for 331 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Green Bay also had an excellent defense. Vince Lombardi was under intense pressure from the entire NFL to make sure the Green Bay Packers not only won the game, but preferably won big to demonstrate the superiority of the NFL. The Chiefs saw this game as an opportunity to show that they were good enough to play against any NFL team. One player who was really looking forward to competing in this game was Len Dawson. He had spent 3 years as a backup in the NFL before joining the Chiefs. The two teams played with their respective footballs from each league. The Chiefs used an AFL ball, the slightly narrow and longer J5V by Spalding, and the Packers played with an NFL ball, the Duke by Wilson. The AFL's 2-point conversion rule was not used. The NFL would go on to add the 2-point conversion rule in 1994. This would also go on to be the only Super Bowl that featured the offset-style goalposts and where the numeric yard markers were 5 yards apart rather than the 10 as they are today. The game was broadcast in the United States by 2 television networks simultaneously. At the time, NBC held the rights to nationally televised AFL games, while CBS had the rights to broadcast NFL games. So both networks were allowed to broadcast the game. During the week leading up to the game, tensions flared between the staffs of these 2 networks, who each wanted to win the ratings war, to the point where a fence was built between the CBS and NBC broadcast trucks. Each network had its own announcers. Ray Scott, Jack Whitaker, and Frank Gifford provided commentary on CBS, while Kurt Gowdy and Paul Christman were on NBC. The location where this first big game was held, and our destination here that we are looking for, is the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. It's also known just as the LA Coliseum. The Coliseum was commissioned in 1921 as a memorial to the Los Angeles veterans of World War I, and it was completed in 1923. It would become the first stadium to host the Summer Olympics 3 times when it hosts the 2028 Summer Olympics. The stadium previously hosted the Summer Olympics in 1932 and 1984. The stadium serves as the home of the University of Southern California Trojans football team. USC actually operates and manages the Coliseum. The Coliseum is jointly owned by the State of California's 6th District Agricultural Association, Los Angeles County, and the City of Los Angeles. Super Bowl I was the only Super Bowl that was not a sellout. Of the 94,000 seat capacity in the Coliseum, 33,000 seats went unsold. The CBS broadcast was seen by 26.75 million people, and NBC was seen by 24.43 million people. The first half of Super Bowl I was competitive as the Chiefs outgained the Packers in total yards 181 to 164, only trailing them by 4 points with a score of 14-10 by halftime. Early in the third quarter, Green Bay safety Willie Wood intercepted a pass and returned it 50 yards to the 5-yard line. That turnover sparked the Packers to score 21 unanswered points in the second half. Green Bay quarterback Bart Starr, who completed 16 of 23 passes for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception, was named MVP. The game had started with the first quarter, the Packers jumping out to an early 7-0 lead, driving 80 yards in 6 plays. On their following drive, the Chiefs moved the ball to Green Bay's 33-yard line, but kicker Mike Mercer missed a 40-yard field goal. Early in the second quarter, Kansas City drove 66 yards in 6 plays, featuring a 31-yard reception by receiver Otis Taylor. Then they would tie the game on a 7-yard pass to Curtis McClinton from quarterback Len Dawson. But the Packers responded on their next drive, advancing 73 yards down the field and scoring on fullback Jim Taylor's 14-yard touchdown run with the team's famed Packers sweep play. Dawson was sacked for an 8-yard loss on the first play of the Chiefs' next drive, but he followed it up with 4 consecutive completions for 58 yards, including a 27-yard pass to Chris Burford. This set up Mercer's 31-yard field goal to make the score 14-10 at the end of the half. In the third quarter, on their first drive of that second half, the Chiefs advanced to their own 49-yard line. But on a third down pass play, a heavy blitz by Green Bay linebackers Dave Robinson and Leroy Caffey collapsed the Chiefs' pocket. Len Dawson threw a wobbly pass that was intercepted by Willie Wood, who ran 50 yards to Kansas City's 5-yard line.
Green Bay quarterback Bart Starr would later say this was the most important play of the entire game.
On their first play after the turnover, running back Elijah Pitts scored on a 5-yard touchdown run to give the Packers a 21-10 lead. The Packers defense then dominated the Chiefs offense for the rest of the game, allowing them to cross midfield only once and for just 1 play. In the third quarter, Kansas City offense totaled only 12 yards, and quarterback Len Dawson would be held to only 5 of 12 passes in the entire second half. Meanwhile, Green Bay forced Kansas City to punt from their own 2-yard line after sacking Dawson twice and got the ball back with great field position on their own 44-yard line. That drive ended with Bart Starr's 13-yard touchdown pass to McGee. Midway through the fourth quarter, Bart Starr completed a 25-yard pass to Carroll Dale and a 37-yard pass to McGee, moving the ball to the Chiefs' 18-yard line. 4 plays later, Pitts scored his second touchdown on a 1-yard run to close out the scoring, giving the Packers the 35-10 win. After the game was over, a reporter asked Vince Lombardi if he thought Kansas City was a good team. Lombardi responded that, though the Chiefs were an excellent, well-coached club, he thought several NFL teams such as Dallas were better than they were. And Super Bowl I, as it would come to be known, was now in the books. Coliseum was the home of the Los Angeles Rams of the National Football League from 1946 to 1979, when they moved to Anaheim Stadium in Anaheim, and again from 2016 to 2019 prior to the team's move to SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. We will be finding SoFi Stadium today on our way to our final destination. The facility had a seating capacity of 93,607 for USC football games and Rams games, making it the largest football stadium in the NFL. The stadium was also the temporary home of the Los Angeles Dodgers of Major League Baseball from 1958 to 1961 and was the host venue for games 3, 4, and 5 of the 1959 World Series. In addition to Super Bowl I, Super Bowl VII was held here. It has served as the home field for a number of other teams, including the 1960 inaugural season for the Los Angeles Chargers and the Los Angeles Raiders. The Coliseum was problematic as an NFL venue. At various times in its history, it was either the largest or one of the largest stadiums in the league. While this allowed the Rams and the Raiders to set attendance records, it also made it extremely difficult to sell out the venue. The NFL amended its blackout rule to allow games to be televised locally if they were sold out 72 hours before kickoff. However, due to the Coliseum's large size, the Rams and later the Raiders games were often blacked out in Southern California even in the team's best years. On January 12, 2016, the NFL gave permission to the St. Louis Rams to relocate back to Los Angeles. The Rams resumed play at the Coliseum while awaiting completion of the SoFi Stadium, not far from here in Inglewood. On August 13, 2016, Coliseum hosted its first NFL game at the stadium since 1994, as the Rams hosted the Dallas Cowboys at a preseason game to a crowd of 89,140 fans. On September 18, 2016, the Coliseum hosted the first Rams regular season home game since 1979 against the Seattle Seahawks. On January 6, 2018, the Coliseum hosted its first Rams playoff game since the 1978 NFC Championship Game against the defending NFC champions, the Atlanta Falcons. On November 19, 2018, the Coliseum hosted its first Monday Night Football game since 1985. Wow, the LA Coliseum sure has played a role in so many events. Now let's head towards our final destination today, and we'll be passing over the new SoFi Stadium. If you're enjoying today's tour, the cost is pretty reasonable. If you could just reach down and hit that subscribe button, it really does help the channel. It also lets me know that you want to see more tours. Ahead of us now is SoFi Stadium. It is a sports and entertainment complex here in Inglewood, California. It was built on the former site of the Hollywood Park racetrack. In January 2015, Rams ownership announced plans to build a stadium in Inglewood, California, as they were unsatisfied with the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis. On January 12, 2016, NFL owners voted to allow the Rams to move to Los Angeles for the 2016 season and construct a stadium. NFL owners also gave the Chargers a one-year option to join the Rams, sharing the new Inglewood Stadium. In January 2017, the Chargers announced plans to leave San Diego and join the Rams in Los Angeles, after failing to receive support for a new stadium to replace Qualcomm Stadium. Construction began in late 2016, and unusual heavy rainfall in 2017 significantly delayed the timeline for the project to be completed. The new stadium was originally scheduled to open in 2019. While the stadium was under construction, the Rams played at Los Angeles Coliseum, and the Chargers played at the StubHub Center. SoFi, which is an online finance company, purchased the naming rights to the stadium in 2019 for $30 million annually. The Los Angeles Rams played the first NFL game at SoFi Stadium on September 13, 2020, against the Dallas Cowboys. The following week, the Chargers played their first game at SoFi Stadium against the Kansas City Chiefs on September 20th, 2020. As fans approach the stadium, they will notice the low profile of the stadium as the playing field is 100 feet below street level, with the roof rising 275 feet above the field. The roof is really a canopy. As the stadium is not enclosed, it's the shape of a massive sail, and it's constructed of translucent glass, allowing the natural light into the facility. Panels at both ends of the stadium can be opened or closed. Inside SoFi Stadium, it has a seating capacity of 70,000 people that's expandable to over 100,000 for high-profile events. Multiple levels of seats suites surround the playing field, including 260 luxury suites. The highest seats at SoFi Stadium are nearly 50 feet closer to the field than the closest seats were at the Los Angeles Coliseum. One of the most unique seating areas at SoFi Stadium are the cabanas. It's a field-level beach club behind one of the end zones. There is a massive video board above the playing field. It features two-sided oval-shaped video board that hangs from the roof of the facility. It's 120 yards long and 40 feet tall. Well, that is a bit about Super Bowl I and the Los Angeles Coliseum, and some info about SoFi Stadium, which will host Super Bowl 56. Well, this puts us pretty close to our final destination today, the Los Angeles International Airport, which has the airport code KLAX and is just commonly referred to just as LAX. It is the primary international airport serving Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. LAX is located in the Westchester neighborhood of Los Angeles, 18 miles or 30 kilometers southwest of downtown. All right, let's get the plane on the ground and we will take a look around LAX.
The Green Bay Packers of the 1950s were one of the worst teams in the NFL, winning just 39 games throughout the decade. There was little reason to believe their destiny was about to change when they drafted a young quarterback out of Alabama named Brian Bartlett Starr.
I didn't have a resume coming out of college. I was injured my last 2 years. I was lucky to be drafted. And if the basketball coach at the University of Alabama had not been a good friend of the personnel director of the Packers, I probably would not have been drafted at all. But in the 17th round, they took a chance on me.
Good fortune fell on the town of Green Bay and Bart Starr with the arrival of head coach Vince Lombardi in 1959.
I wasn't going to get an opportunity to play, and I hadn't signed the contract, and so he calls me, he says, well, you know, what are you going to do? You sign this contract or else. I mean, you had no choice in those days. And I said, I'd just soon get out of here.
He said, as a fellow coach, I want you to know that I don't think Lenny can play football in the National Football League. I said, well, I appreciate that very much, Paul, but I'm still going to take him.
Hank Stram was utilizing the running game. He was utilizing the things that I did best. My ball handling was very good. With play-action passes really helped because of my ability to handle the football.
We are on the ground here at LAX. Welcome. Let's find a place to park the plane. I'll get the plane shut down and we will send up the drone to take a look around the airport. As always, anything we talked about today was just my research and preparation for the flight to find the LA Coliseum today. If you have any corrections or comments, please leave them below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I would appreciate it if you could just reach down and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel, and again, I appreciate it. And if you're already subscribed, maybe you could share the channel with someone else you think that might be interested in our tours. Los Angeles International Airport, code KLAX, referred to just as LAX, is located in the Westchester neighborhood here of Los Angeles, about 18 miles, 30 kilometers southwest of downtown. The airport opened in October of 1928, and the first structure, Hangar Number 1, was erected in 1929, and the building still stands at the airport. Before the 1930s, U.S. airports used a two-letter abbreviation code, and at the time the airport was just LA. As aviation and airports grew, in 1947 these identifiers were expanded to three letters. LA received an additional letter, X, which had no special meaning or significance. The airport sits on 3,500 acres and has 4 parallel runways. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's tour, and I hope to see you on the next one.